You know how they say about the job market, it's tough out there? Well, right now, it's tough. And to get a job, more people are doing what they gotta do, including getting, creative with the truth.
I dumbed down my job title. I put manager where I was actually the director of the whole unit. I said it was a group manager.
You want to know what happened after she did that? She got an interview. Hi, I'm Paul Haberstrood. Welcome to The Cost of Living. If you needed to undersell your experience, leave a few things off the old resume to land a job, would you? More people are now doing exactly that. And it's working. Also today, Canada could be described as a somewhat reluctant energy superpower. But now that oil is once again the main event for the global economy, could that change? Up first, remember the Nigerian prince email scam? Send a bit of money, get thousands back? It's been around since the dawn of email. Oh, for those simpler times. Because scammers these days have leveled up. So, Jenny DeRosio, there are a lot of scams going around these days. What about you? Have you ever got?
Well, kind of, yeah. When I was a kid, I really wanted a squirrel. They're like these fluffy pipe cleaner worms with googly eyes, and they were supposed to move by magic. It was fascinating. And when I actually got the squirrel, I learned you move them around on a clear fishing line.
Okay, so you were disappointed. It kind of wasn't a great toy, but that's not really a scam.
I felt like I got scammed, Paul. It really stung. And more people than ever are feeling what I felt, because there are more scams than ever. Suzanne Cunningham fell for one. She lives in Calgary, and a couple of months ago, it was her fiancé's birthday. When it comes to buying gifts, she's kind of a straight shooter. So
I just asked her point blank, what does she want? And she wanted this Baggu branded laptop case. I was like, easy, I love it.
So Baggu is this trendy bag brand. They use a lot of fun colors. Think like horseshoes and smiley faces. So Suzanne went shopping.
And so I just searched Baggu Canada. And I try to shop from within Canada, when you can. And I clicked the first link that seemed like not an ad.
She assumed that site was the official Baggu site, so she put it in order. But then, something started to feel off. She emailed the company. A few days went by. No package.
And I never heard back. And I was like, cool, I've been got.
Okay, how exactly did they get her?
It was a spoofed website, so it looks exactly like the actual Baggu website. And this is a pretty common scam. It's happened to WestJet, the Flight Center. There's even fake government websites.
Okay, well, if they're putting up a fake government website, what are they trying for?
They want your information and your money. I mean, Suzanne paid money for that laptop case.
Well, what did she hand over?
A little over $40, so not terrible. But I talked to another woman who clicked on what she thought was an invoice from one of the vendors she deals with. She almost lost nearly $200,000 after the scammers got access to her computer.
$200,000? I mean, nothing against $40, but that is real money.
Yeah, I mean, last year, Canadians lost more than $700 million to fraud. That's according to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. And in the last 4 years, we lost nearly $2.5 billion because of scams.
Okay, I love us Canadians, but are we maybe just a titch too trusting?
Well, a recent TD Bank fraud survey reported that 1 in 4 Canadians have either been a victim to a fraud or a financial scam, or know someone who has.
So a lot of us have been taken in by a scam.
And there's a ton of them out there. I mean, the government has an entire alphabetized index of fraud.
So the scammers are kind of getting after it, right? They're branching out?
Yes. And people who work in fraud prevention say things are only kind of getting worse. Now there are scams involving voice cloning, deep fakes, and much more crafty phishing, vishing, and smishing.
Okay, I know about phishing emails, right? Those are common. The other two, not so much.
Okay, so vishing is fake phone calls, and smishing is fake texts.
Smishing? I get a lot of those, and now I'll call them, hey, got a smish.
You got smished. I get a lot of them too. We all do now. Jonathan Anderson teaches at Memorial University. He studies computer security and privacy. He says AI is helping scammers run more scams.
People are using the ability to automate things that a lot of modern computer technologies provide in order to make scams scale up so they can attack more people more efficiently at lower cost.
Okay, good. Well, then scammers are at least one group that have really found a way to become more productive using AI. Super, super happy for them.
Good for them, hey? Well, Jonathan says it used to take more time putting together a convincing phishing email. You know, if you were a fraudster, you had to take the time to make an email look convincing, like it might have actually come from someone's boss. But stuff like ChatGPT and Gemini can help with that now.
And so they'd only be applied to people who are kind of special, people who had high net value or people who had information that scammers particularly wanted. And as those things become more automatable, we're all special now.
I think I might want to be just a little less special.
A lot of people would love that, I think. RBC put out a poll recently and asked Canadians how they feel about scams. No surprise, the majority of us feel like we have to be on the lookout for new scams all the time. And we're angry that it's just become part of life.
Well, yeah, because it also feels like we just can't do much about it.
That's part of what's so frustrating. We're just playing defense all the time. And we hear advice like change your password, but...
So if somebody had to change your password every time somebody tried to scam them, then you would spend your whole life just changing your password.
Yeah, I don't really change my passwords. I probably shouldn't tell the scammers on the radio that, but I don't really do it.
It might be a little too late for you, I think. A lot of people don't do that. And now AI is making things even worse. That's why Jonathan thinks AI companies need to take responsibility for what's happening.
People who are building AI systems, they have a moral duty to at least try to do something, to at least try to reduce the prevalence of their technology being used for purposes that they hopefully disagree with.
Just hoping a tech company is going to do something out of like a sense of moral duty, that seems okay, but also kind of like wishful thinking.
I mean, OpenAI's policies, that's the company that operates ChatGPT, say, hey, don't use our services to defraud or scam people, and they do monitor their tech for abuses.
Well, bully for them, but also these scams, there's more of them, they keep going.
Yeah, they do. And that's why insurance companies are sort of responding and starting to get in the game. They're now offering cyber risk insurance. It covers you if you get scammed. One company I spoke with says it only costs $6 a month.
Well, for your $6, what do you get?
It covers you against identity theft, financial account hacks, malware on your computer. Even if you fall for one of those fake CRA calls, they'll cover you for that because those are often made through the internet.
Okay, but you also have to pay for that insurance. And, you know, that's like what? Another $70 a year, but that's $70 on top of what you're already paying for insurance.
Yeah, not everyone is going to pay for this. The uptake on this type of insurance is pretty low so far. I spoke with Molly Reynolds. She's a lawyer in Toronto. She counsels clients on things like cybersecurity and data protection. She said there's some people this type of insurance could benefit, especially high-profile people.
We often talk about it as a product that might be of particular interest to people whose livelihoods are really tied to their online personas. So not just doing their work online and, working remotely, but social media influencers.
So if you're someone who's extremely online, maybe this kind of insurance could be for you.
Or if you're extremely offline and you're not very tech savvy. But Molly says most of us already have some form of protection if a scam happens to us, through stuff like your credit card or with a credit reporting agency.
And when you really dig into what's covered by those free products that organizations offer you, a lot of the time it looks very similar to this standalone personal cyber insurance.
So basically, if you have stuff through work, your credit card, read the fine print, know what it is, which I should admit, Jenny, I kind of don't do.
You might have to start doing that. These scams will keep coming. Fraud experts say we need to be more on guard. Some classic advice that could help us all out, though, is just to take a beat. Here's Jonathan Anderson again.
So it's things like when you feel like you are being pressured into making a quick decision, do whatever needs to be done to take a step back and engage your slow thinking brain instead of just reacting, because that's what the scammer wants.
So if anything feels off, listen to your gut.
Exactly. Suzanne maybe didn't take a beat, but her story turned out okay anyway. I mean, she appealed to her bank over the $40 she lost, and they got back to her. I was actually talking to her when she read the email.
The case has now been closed. Thank you for your patience. We have completed our review and determined that your dispute is valid. The $43 credit applied to your account will remain. The case is now closed and no further action is required. I got him. They didn't get me. I got them.
Do you feel vindicated?
I feel vindicated. Yeah, the bank believes me. I'm a nobody and the bank believes me.
She's not a nobody. She got her $40 back.
1 point for the nobodies.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks, Paul.
On your Radio NBI podcast, this is The Cost of Living. I'm Paul Haberstrood. You know how honesty is the best policy? Yeah, for sure. It is. But you know what else is good? Landing a job. So now more people on their resumes aren't so much being dishonest as they're making some artful omissions and finding that what they don't say can help get a foot in the door.
Melinda Walker has been looking for a job for months. She has decades of experience in ad sales, but at 61 years old, it's been tough. At the start, she sent out a flood of resumes.
I sent out a lot, like 400, 500. Usually I didn't even hear back.
After getting nowhere, she tried something new. Melinda rewrote her resume and erased 15 years from her job history. She also made some of her previous roles look less impressive.
So I dumbed down my job title. I put manager where I was actually the director of the whole unit.
And almost right away, it worked.
It was instant that I got calls for interviews. I would say like 15 to 20% more.
Some call this resume botox. Fudging dates or editing your job history to make yourself look younger. And there's plenty of advice out there on how to do it.
Hide your age using these 3 steps. First, make sure to remove your graduation.
Sandra Lavoie is with the recruiting agency Robert Half in Ottawa, and she's seeing a lot of resumes that have been botoxed.
No dates on when you went to university, how many years it took for you to complete, and we're seeing it regularly compared to 5 years ago. We would never see dates removed from your resume, never.
But 5 years ago, it was an employee's market. Today, not so much. She says people are worried about finding jobs, especially older people.
They're really concerned that they won't get their job because of age. There's discrimination even in today's society, and age discrimination is real.
In an online survey a few years ago, the federal government asked Canadians if they'd ever experienced ageism. Nearly half who responded said yes, and some of it was in the workplace. In hiring, Sandra says, age discrimination can be subtle. Like, employers will tell her, "We don't mind an older candidate. We just need someone who's up on the latest tech."
There is this preconceived idea that more mature candidates are not strong in systems and technology. And often they're looked over because of that.
But there is a fine line between omitting stuff from your resume and being misleading. Alison Venditti is a career coach in Toronto. She says taking stuff off your resume, that's no problem.
I'm like, if you're taking off your summer high school job and your first job out of school as a lifeguard off your resume, I'm like, good. It probably shouldn't be there. We don't need to know that you worked at A&W for 3 years in like 2006.
But if you downplay your relevant job experience just to look younger, it could backfire. You could land something you're actually overqualified for.
Even if they do get the job, they're like, well, now I'm making $20,000 less and I'm bored out of my skull. And I'm like, yeah, that's what's going to happen.
And if you have to pretend to be someone you're not just to get the job, it may not be the job for you.
You're not going to want to work at a place that you had to hide all these pieces of yourself. And I know that's really, really harsh, but if you have to pretend you're something you're not to get in the door, then you're going to have a hard time when you're in there.
But in a tight job market, sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do. And Melinda Walker says Botoxing her resume has worked. She's had way more interest. Now, she just needs to prep for that interview on Zoom.
If you take like tape and you tape back like your eyes here, like, so you stick it here and then you pull these pieces back and up.
For the cost of living, I'm Jennifer Keene.
And if I straighten my hair, I look younger, or I do like a high ponytail, because then I look young and I don't wear.
This is The Cost of Living. I'm Paul Haberstrood. We can go a long time without talking about oil. Then something happens, a war in the Persian Gulf, and it's oil, oil, oil. Who has it? Who doesn't? How high will prices go? It's the same conversation we had during the oil crisis in the 70s. And in 2008, when prices spiked to nearly $150 a barrel. Now that conversation is back. So could it change anything here in Canada? David D. Tomasi is a political economist at Queen's University and the author of Profits and Power, Navigating the Politics and Geopolitics of Oil. David, hi.
Hello.
So David, some people, when they look at what's happening in the Gulf, they're hearing echoes of things like the Arab oil embargo of the 70s. But that was a long time ago. If we look at the world's dependence on oil then versus now, how much has it changed?
It's probably gotten worse. I mean, worse, if you believe dependency on oil is a bad thing, it's gotten worse. In 1975, about 87% of the world's energy was carbon-based, oil, gas, and coal. Today, after 50 years of trying, it's about at 82. We've dropped it by 5 to 7%. So the capacity of non-carbon-based sources to substitute is far, far less than I think most people understand, and will take far more time than people would like. So meanwhile, we're stuck with this. We have an oil dependency primarily in terms of transport. Planes, trains, automobiles, and ships. They all, except for a very small portion of them, rely on carbon-based fuels to move. And as more people want to move and as they have more money, more planes and trains and ships are built. And, so our dependency on oil for transport fuel is still enormously high. It's about 94% of all engines run on that stuff.
I think it might surprise some people to hear that the dependence on oil has only dropped by that 5%. I mean, does it depend where in the world you're at and how you're looking at those numbers? As in parts of Europe, maybe, yeah, it's down more, but then parts of Africa, not at all?
Yeah, I mean, people also should segment the world differently. There's what I call the rich developed world, which can afford to pursue the energy transition, can build smart cities and invest in subsidized electric vehicles and these sorts of things, but you need money to do that. Then there's what I call the middle income world, where I kind of place the two emerging giants. Well, China's not really emerging anymore, but it's still only got a GDP of about $12,000 per capita. So it still wants to grow really quickly, and India is just starting that transition. And they use both a lot of carbon-based fuels to do that because their goal is growth first. And then there's the 2 billion people in the world who literally have no access to reliable energy whatsoever. And we sometimes forget about them, but the cheapest way to solve energy poverty at the moment is not going to be windmills or batteries. It's going to be carbon-based production that can provide them the basics of economic growth. So all these folks have different priorities when it comes to the energy transition, and most of our attention is on the very rich world, but we shouldn't forget the 3/4 of the people in the world who aren't that.
So then when you look at what's happening with oil prices, you look at what's happening in the Gulf right now, does that add or change anything to the conversation we're having in Canada right now about Canada maybe or maybe not, being like an energy superpower?
Well, certainly it's given a steroid to it. I was in Ottawa earlier this week, and we had three major think tanks, all of whom were putting on conferences related to energy, superpower, and how do we get there. So it's captured public attention. But what hasn't happened yet is a project that has gone to an FID, final investment decision, and a shovel in the ground somewhere that indicates that someone is going to build something. That hasn't happened yet. Now, maybe it was unrealistic to think that that could happen in a year. But if it doesn't happen in the next year, you're going to get a lot of people doing two things. One is those opposed to the point of views I've been talking about will continue to try to delay this effort because they probably don't want to see extra oil and gas being developed or being shipped out. There are obviously a chunk of Canadians that believe it shouldn't be. Or B, that even the people that do will start getting suspicious of the federal government. Do you really mean it? And another place where this is clear is, will pipeline companies come to the table because they've been burned to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars? To say, well, you said you wanted it before, but now you don't, and I put a lot of money into it, and it didn't happen. So, I'm not quite sure I'm going to do that again until I know for sure.
I heard you give a talk, and you said that for all the disagreements there can be around oil and pipelines in this country, that you actually think oil is something that can help unify the country and not divide it. Why do you think that?
Well, because a couple of things. One is, and I would extend that argument to natural resources in general. And this is a bipartisan failing across liberal and some conservative arguments or for the last 20 years. We sort of been acting like we're ashamed of what we already do well in the country in terms of our economic strengths, which is enormously based in natural resources. I sometimes argue that we've been quiet about that and wanting to tell the world that we also do other things, usually related to the high-tech kind of sector. So it's not as if it's only oil and gas we're talking about here. We're talking about minerals in Ontario. We're talking about forestry in BC. We're talking about agriculture across the country. And these are not low-tech businesses. And these are not things, people may identify them with being something that we used to do. But actually, I think that if we do this right, we should be collectively proud of our natural resources sector. And secondarily, we need to understand better how much resource development that is done in one sector gets transferred to another and allows us all to have a fairly high standard of living that's publicly funded. I think we haven't done a good job on being able to do that. And thirdly, there's an urgency here. 6 months ago, I think that this year, Canada became, for the first time ever, a net electricity importer. All right, we aren't investing enough in our electricity production to satisfy our collective needs. We're going to need to do more. And some of that is probably going to be natural gas fired. It has to be, because of lots of other reasons I can elaborate on. So all these things, this nation building effort, it's not oil and gas versus everybody else. It's collectively, we need to do this to make our entire country stronger, and the entire country can benefit.
Sure, but when I'm listening to you, someone who agrees with you is going to say, yeah, absolutely. But when it comes to unifying, somebody who says, you know what, my most important consideration is the environment, it doesn't feel like that's unifying. I'm missing how it doesn't continue to be divisive.
First of all, I think it's divisive because I think that people with the more, I wouldn't say more extreme, but who are more vocal about their views tend to dominate a lot of what we read and see in the popular news. And that's true, just generally speaking. Where does environmental concern play in the average Canadian, whatever that means, hierarchy of things that they care about? And in the last election, it was like 10th or 7th. Like, it's not top of mind. Top of mind is cost of living. Top of mind is, being able to have an economically affordable house. These are things that I think we can maybe talk about, that energy cuts right into, is the day-to-day concerns of the average Canadian are making a living, will their kids have jobs, and that sort of stuff. And one of the problems with this current energy crisis is it's going to play out in general inflationary terms across the board. as long as it lasts, because when you're paying $110 for a barrel of oil, it translates into much more expensive products. Whether you're driving, whether the truck that's driving your food into the supermarket is going to pay more to get there, it's going to cost more. And that's where it hits the average Canadian right in the pocketbook.
So then, getting back to where we started, which was what's happening in the Gulf and what's happening with oil prices, what would be your takeaway from Canada, given what's happening?
Well, to stay the course. That's number one, is that if we want to be an energy superpower, it's going to be a decades-long effort to do it. It won't happen overnight. Two, to stop thinking of either or. Either we do carbon-based fuels or we do renewables, but we can't do both because somehow this is ideologically wrong on either side. I think that's a mistake. I think we can walk and chew gum. I think we should do every piece of energy we can, including nuclear reactors, including advanced solar cell technologies. We should do all of it because the world will need all of it. And if we do it right, we can sell it abroad to others who want it. And I think we should view energy as an encompassing national building feature. The last thing I'll say about Canada is we have an enormous capacity to get in our own way and let our regional differences dominate when we should be looking abroad and thinking about how we can play a more important role in the world, because we can, but we're only 40 million people in a world that's got 8.2 billion. I think we need to be a bit less regionally divisive and a bit more, hey, how can we make this work collectively so that we're stronger and therefore can build a world that we want to see, which isn't what we're seeing right now.
Well, David, thanks for all that. Enjoyed talking.
Thank you for having me.
David DiTomasi is a political economist at Queen's University and the author of Profits and Power: Navigating the Politics and Geopolitics of Oil. That's all for the show. The Cost of Living is based in Calgary. The show is produced by Danielle Nerman, Jenny DeRosio, and Jennifer Keene, with help from Jeff Kynock. Oh, and if you hear anything on the show, want to give us a call, let us know. Our number is 1-866-550-COST. That's 1-866-550-2678. Give us a shout. Tell us what you're thinking. If anything on the show kind of twigged you, we'd like to hear about it. Or you can send us an email, costofliving@cbc.ca. Thanks for listening. I'm Paul Haberstrood.